المشتاق لا تنمي هذه أنوار ذي سلمي عن قليل أنت في الحرم عند خير العرب والعجم
قف أمام القابر بالأدب
أيها
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الفاتحة. من تعلم وتعليم وتذكر وتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على تماسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء على الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. نعلم أن نبينا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم على وأخلقنا في أخلاقهم وطريقتنا في طريقتهم الموضوع وإلى حضرة النبي سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. رب اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين. So this week, اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى محمد. فاتح لما أغلق الخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي وصراطك المستقيم وعلى آله وصحبه حق قدره ومقداره العظيم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا نفعنا وزدنا علما وسلم إلى أحلى كل رحمة من لسان يفقهوا قوله. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. Okay, assalamu alaikum. So this week, inshallah, we will continue with the pick up where we left off. So we continue where we left off with the requisites of the Hajj, inshallah. قال رضي الله عنه. We continue to Habib Ahmad bin Zain, the author of Risalah al-Jami'ah, carries on to the fourth wajib, of the fourth wajib, or the fourth requisite of the Hajj is the stoning. So in the text itself, Habib Ahmad bin Zain mentions Ramyu only. So Rami is the act of the stoning. But in fact, of course, this he includes what is included is both the stoning on the day of Eid, the Jamrat al-Aqaba, and then after that the following 3 days of Tashriq. Right, so on the 10th, on the Eid, the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, and then after that on the 11th and 12th and 13th of Dhul Hijjah, there are 3 sites to be stoned, on the days of Tashriq. and on the day of Eid, on the 10th, there is the Jamratul Aqaba. Okay, so first we're going to cover the Jamratul Aqaba, and then we cover the 3 stoning sites. Okay, so the permissible time for the stoning of the Jamratul Aqaba begins with the second half of the night of Eid. Okay, i.e. the eve of the 10th of the Hajjah. Right, of course, the 10th of the Hajjah begins with Maghrib. Right after the 9th, when the sun sets on the 9th, right, that is the entry into the 10th of, that's the night of the 10th, yeah, of the Hajjah, of the night of Eid. Okay, so it's permissible, right? The permissible time is permissible to begin stoning from midway through that night, i.e. from the second half, from the entry or the beginning of the second half of the night. Okay, when we say second half of the night, we're not talking about midnight, i.e. What do you call this? 12 a.m. Okay, we're talking about the night divided into 2, right? Okay, so from Maghrib to Fajr the next morning, however many hours that is, and it's divided into 2. Okay, as we mentioned with regards staying in Muzdalifah, okay, spending the night in Muzdalifah earlier. Okay, so this is a permissible time. So when we talk about the permissible time, there are 3 kinds of time. Okay, the times are divided into 3 categories or 3 kinds. Okay, so there is the permissible time. Okay, i.e. when we do it during this time, within this time, it is valid. Okay, better than that is the preferred time. Yeah, and better than that is the best time. Okay, so the permissible time is from the second half of the night of Eid until sunset on the 3rd day of Tashriq, on the 13th of Dhul Hijjah. Right, but the best time is from sunrise on the 10th until the entry of Dhuhr time. This is the best time. Okay, and if one does not manage to catch the best time, then one aims for the preferred time, which is on the same day all the way until sunset. Okay, after Dhuhr, after the entry of Dhuhr until sunset, there is no longer the best time. That is that's called the preferred time. And if one is not able to get that as well, or sometimes when we go for Hajj, there's congestion, crowds. After Arafah, we're tired. Maybe you want to take a rest. So there is the option of delaying it further. And the latest is by the sunset on the 13th of the Hajjah. Then of course, if you're going to do this, it has to be, when you're going to do that, one cannot delay all the way till then, because you have to do the stoning in order. Okay, so if one is not stoned, right, by the time it comes to on the 13th, it's going to be a bit of a rush, because first you have to stone the Jamratul Aqaba, and then after that you have to stone for the first day, right, and then stone for the second day, and then stone again for the 3rd day, all 3 sites. Okay, so it's quite that would be quite hectic. It would be unwise to push it back all the way. I'm just saying that in the event that we want to, it's possible to, in our madhab, is valid. Yeah, but of course there are other madhabs. That's why the best time is from sunrise until the entry of Dhuhr, because the other madhabs say that that is the wajib time. Okay, so those are the three kinds of times. The best, and then the preferred, and then the permissible, in that order of merit. Yeah? The best being the best. Okay, so there are conditions of validity for the stoning of the Jamratul Aqaba. Okay, number 1, 7 pebbles must be used consecutively, one after another. Okay, 7 pebbles are to be thrown one after another. Secondly, that what is thrown must be some form of stone. Okay, i.e., that means excluded by this is it cannot be wood, it cannot be pearls, you cannot throw gold or silver. It has to be some kind of stone, even precious stones, but as long as it's a stone. Okay, if you choose to throw precious stones, Okay, thirdly, what one does must be able to be termed throwing. Okay, so we have to there must be a throwing motion. They cannot be just putting or placing into the hole. Okay, it must also be done with a hand. The throwing must be done with a hand, not a bow or a slingshot or some other propulsion device. Okay, not a foot, not a head. Okay, one must then be certain that the pebble hits a target. Okay, so here we're talking about the throwing place, not the pillar. So maybe I'll just draw this quickly. Okay, so this is what we have, and now today the Jami'ah al-Aqaba. There is a sort of a pit, okay, a hole, and then in that pit there is a pillar, right, to help people aim. Yeah, and this is the wall around it, and there's a wall that goes all around. Okay, and people stand around here, around the wall, right, and they throw. Okay, so this, I suppose, like I mentioned, I mean, it's meant to help the aim. Okay, but when one aims, okay, one must be certain that the pebble hits the target, the stone hits the target, and this, right, is not the target. This is the pillar. This is not the target. Right? This whole area here, right? This whole area here, this is the target. Right? This is the throwing place. Okay, so if, for example, one throws, maybe one, because the idea is where at this place we are, some people think that we are throwing the stones at the devil. Okay, in fact, there's a story behind this. In fact, we're not throwing the stones at the devil. This is not the devil. Yeah. Okay. It's not him. We're not throwing the stones at the devil here. The story behind this place, the wisdom behind it was that at one point these places, these jamarat, these places were where Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam was encountered the devil, and the devil tried to whisper to him, right, insinuate to him some evil, and every time the devil tried to whisper to him, he pelted him with a stone. Okay, and so this has been memorialized, right, and we do it until the end of time, inshallah, or until the end of Hajj. So the idea is this place is where the devil was once, right, in this incident. Okay, so this is not the devil himself, right? Okay, and so what happens is, if somebody gets a bit carried away and thinks he's hitting the devil and he wants to aim for the pillar, right, that's fine, right? If he hits the pillar and then it goes down, okay, intending that he has to go down here, he hits the pillar and he goes down, it's fine. But if it hits the pillar, right, and then it bounces out, okay, it doesn't go down into the hole, then the throw is invalid, right? Then one has to throw another one. Yeah. Okay, so that, I hope that is clear. Okay, so one should be certain that the pebble hits the target, and the target is the throwing place and not the pillar itself. Okay, one should also be intending or aiming at the target, and not you see what do you call this? You see a guy you don't like, maybe across the way, or you see a bird, okay, and so you aim for the bird, and of course that is haram if you hit the bird. And if you don't hit the bird, and you're not a lousy shot, and it falls into the hole after that, it still doesn't count, because you're not aiming for the target. not aiming for the throwing place. Okay, so again, it should be done before sunset on the third day, before Maghrib, before the entry of Maghrib on the third day of Tashriq latest, for those who delay it past the best and the preferred times. Okay, and your intention, one's intention also should not be deflected. Okay, sorry, so just now number 6 was throwing at the aiming at the target, right, as opposed to other people, and the intention also should not be deflected, i.e. it should not be, the intention should continue, should persist in aiming for the target and not aiming at other things. You know what happens if someone is doesn't have a hand, for example, has no hands maybe. Okay, then what does one do? It is permissible to engage someone to throw on one's behalf, and not just someone who doesn't have hands. Anybody who is tired also is possible also, because this what do you call this? The location of this Jamratul Aqaba. So we have this, the small one, right, Jamratul Kubra and Jamratul Wusta, and then the big one, Jamratul Aqaba. Okay, so now this is Mina over here. Yeah, this whole, in fact, this whole area. Okay, this whole area here is Mina. Yeah, and it's a long walk from here all the way to the Jamratul Aqaba, right, past the Jamratul Kubra and Jamratul Wusta, right. The Jamratul Aqaba is a long walk. So if someone does not, is weak, if we have an old person, a weak person, or someone who's really very tired, right, not old but maybe not used to walking so much, right, it's possible for this person to engage someone to throw, right, on his behalf, right, if one is not able to. Okay, with the conditions lah. And of course the person has to throw, the one who is appointed to throw on your behalf has to first throw for himself, right, and then after that he can perform he can perform what he was delegated, the task that was delegated to him, which is to throw on your behalf. And if after that, if someone appoints someone to throw for them on the first day, for example, and then after that, the next day he feels up for it, he feels better, or his strength has returned after the after being tired from the earlier exertions of the Hajj and of Arafah. And the next day he feels better, he's up for it, he can do it. He does not have to do it. It's already considered done, okay, by the person who he engaged to perform do the stoning on his behalf. So these are the conditions of validity of stoning at Jamratul Aqaba. Right, and there are many sunnahs. I'm just putting in some sunnahs that I can fit on the slide. Okay, sunnah to perform it before the shaving or cutting of hair, before the Tawaf, before the slaughter. Okay, and this ends the time of Talbiyah, because it's down the entry of the time of Eid. So it is now the time of Takbir. So at the end of Talbiyah, the Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik. Now what has begun is Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, and so on. Yeah. Okay, so these are some of the sunan. It is also sunnah to perform it on the 10th, between sunrise until Dhuhr. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, this is the best time. Okay, and to perform it first thing on arriving in Mina. So when the pilgrims reach the valley of Muhassir near Mina from Muzdalifah, right, it is sunnah for them to quicken the step for a short distance, right, of about a stone's throw, and then they move towards Jamratul Aqaba. They head for Jamratul Aqaba and they stone it as they are when they arrive. So if they're mounted, they stone it mounted. If they're on foot, they stone it on foot. If they're in on a vehicle, right, from a vehicle, right, with the 7 stones picked up from Muzdalifah. It's sunnah to pick up the stones from Muzdalifah, and it's makruh to pick the stones up from the stoning site. Okay, this is the case because this is the greeting of Mina. So when we arrive, the emphasis on stoning immediately upon arrival, because this is because the stoning is the greeting of Mina. Okay, and after the Jamratul Aqaba, it is the time for the sunnah or the sacrifice. Okay, whether that is the sunnah sacrifice or an expiation that one has to pay. Okay, a dam, like for leaving a requisite, for example. Okay, the second kind of stoning is that of the 3 sites. So just now the Aqaba was done on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, on the day of Eid, and then the next stoning is that of the 3 stoning sites on each day of the days of Tashriq, on the 11th and 12th and 13th of Dhul Hijjah. So the permissible time is valid for us to begin throwing with the entry of Dhuhr, right, on every day of Tashriq until sunset on the 3rd day of Tashriq. Okay, so if I don't throw it on the first day and I want to throw, I can throw the first day's throw, the throw for the 11th, I can do it on the 12th, but only after the entry of Dhuhr. Okay, but if I want to push them all to the 3rd day also, it's possible. So I want to throw all 3, I want to stone at all 3 for all 3 stoning for all 3 days, right, on the 13th, right, all 3 stoning sites for all 3 days on the 13th. It's also possible. Of course, it will take longer. Okay, so one has to calculate, take this into account if one wants to delay. So the conditions of validity of stoning at the 3 stoning sites is: number 1, it must be performed. The stoning at the 3 stoning sites must be performed after that of the Jamratul Aqaba. Okay, it's invalid if done before. Okay, each stoning site must be stoned with 7 pebbles consecutively, as is the case with the earlier Jamrah, and the proper sequence must be observed. So one begins from, as I mentioned earlier, one begins with the Jamratul Kubra, and then Jamratul Wusta, and then Jamratul Aqaba. So this begins with this, and then this one, and then this one. In this order, the order must be followed. Okay, again, it must be performed after the entry of Dhuhr, as mentioned above. What is thrown must be some form of stone. What one does must be considered throwing, not just putting. So there are similar conditions of validity to the Jamratul Aqaba. Must be done with the hand. Must be certain that pebble hits the target. On intent or aims at the target, and one's intention must not be deflected also. Okay, so these are the conditions of validity for stoning at the 3 stoning sites. So the difference being, they must be done after the Jamratul Aqaba. Okay. Sunnah to take a bath intending stoning. So it's the sunnah of the bath begins with from the time of Fajr, right? And the best time is after the entry of Dhuhr. So also sunnah to takbir Allahu Akbar, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar when throwing the pebbles, right? The one face the Qibla, the one have Mina on one's right and Makkah on one's left, or rather that was for the Aqaba. Okay, so this is with these two. So this is what the stoning involves. Okay, the Jamratul Aqaba and the 3 Jamarat, the 3 stoning sites. The Jamratul Kubra, number 2 is the Wusta, and number 3 is the Aqaba. So what has to be done in that order. Okay, Tawaf al-Wada. Okay, the farewell Tawaf. So after all the other rites, then finally one performs the farewell Tawaf. Okay, it is wajib on everyone who intends to return home or depart from Makkah to a qasr distance. Okay, a qasr distance meaning a distance beyond which or at which one can shorten one's prayers. Okay, which is about 2 marhalas away, which is about 82 kilometers. Okay, and it's disobedience. It's a sin to live without the farewell, without the tawaf wada, without the farewell circumambulation, the farewell tawaf. And one must return if one is still within 2 marhalas. Okay, if one is further than this, then one is not obliged to return but must slaughter. Okay, there's an expiation to be made, right? So one, if this is if one goes. So anyway, if one is less than two marhalas away, it's better to return. One should return, otherwise one has sinned. Okay, so the integrals are the same as the Tawaf al-Ifada, the going forth circumambulation, which we've covered earlier, right? So one must have ablution and so on. It must be performed after completing all other rites of worship, okay, for the Hajj. Okay, and it's not valid to combine the Tawaf al-Ifada, to combine the Tawaf Wada, the farewell Tawaf, with the Tawaf Ifada, the going forth circumambulation, which is an obligatory integral of the Hajj. It's not valid to combine them. If you try to combine them, then the Tawaf the only Tawaf that will be recognized or valid will be the Tawaf al-Ifada. The Tawaf Wada will not be valid. Right? And then if one does that, and then assumes that it's done, and then in the end, what happens is one owes an expiation. Okay, there must be a sacrifice, right? Because the Tawaf al-Ifada is a wajib, is a requisite. Okay, and if one does not perform the expiation, then one has sinned. So it's important to take note of this. Okay, and after the farewell Tawaf, one is not allowed to remain in Makkah except for travel purposes, preparing for travel, or any other urgent purposes, but not including visiting friends or family, or visiting someone who's ill, buying, selling, etc. Okay, generally, one should do it as the last thing one does in Makkah. Okay, this farewell tawaf is not wajib on women who are menstruating or experiencing postnatal bleeding, not postmenstrual bleeding. Please note, women who are menstruating or experiencing postnatal bleeding. Yeah, unless they return to purity before leaving, so that ends, the bleeding ends, and they have had their wash, and there's time for them to perform the Tawaf Wada before leaving, then it is wajib on them. And other people who are the excuses for missing Jum'ah and Jama'ah prayer, right? Similarly, people who have this kind of excuses, the Tawaf Wada is not, the farewell Tawaf is not wajib on them. Okay, someone fears getting left behind, or fears for their property or safety or their life, okay, and so on. Okay, wa amma sunan fa kullu ma siwa al-arkani wal wajibat. Right, as for the sunnahs of the Hajj, so we've covered the arkan, the integrals, the obligatory integrals, and we've covered the wajibat, the requisites. Okay, now Habib Ahmad Menzin comes to the sunnahs. Right, and I'm going to just touch this in passing and just put it up there as a slide for you, for your reference. Okay, the sunnahs are many, what we've been doing so far has been to always cover the integrals and then the conditions of validity and then the sunnahs. Okay, and this is a safe bet if you want to. It'd be good advice to follow this order if you want to prepare for Hajj. Inshallah, may Allah grant us Hajj Mabrur soon, right? As soon as possible. Right, sooner rather than later now will be, I think, a good time. Hopefully, maybe, not so many people, a bit less congested. In any case, right? In his good time, inshallah. So, with regards we've covered the arkan and the wajibat, and for the sunnah, they are everything that should be performed, other than the integrals and requisites. So whatever should be performed that is not an integral and not a requisite, these are the sunnahs. Okay, so one of the sunnahs, one of the main sunnahs is to recite the talbiyah continuously, right, moving, and so on. Okay. Okay, so there are various sunnahs related to the various aspects of the Hajj or stages of the Hajj. So some are related to the ihram, right, the making the intention and donning the. Okay, so bathing before and perfuming the body, but not the ihram, not the clothes, right? Not the items, not the izar and the rida. Okay, for men is to put on new white izar and rida. So the izar is the top half, two pieces of clothing, right? The top and the bottom half. So the top half is called the izar, and the bottom, rather the bottom half is called the izar, and the top half is called the rida. Okay, and then after one gets into ihram, there is a sunnah of ihram, 2 rakats. Okay, then there are sunnah also that are related to the tawaf, circumambulation. Okay, so for example, walking, facing the Hajar Aswad and kissing it, supplicating between them. I think it's no need for me to read out. It's quite clear there. Okay, there are certain du'as that are sunnah to read at certain points during the tawaf, right? Like for example, between the Yamani corner and the Hajar Aswad, one reads Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adhaban nar. And between the various corners, there are different sunnah du'as, right? Trotting, not to jog, right? For the first, to walk briskly, okay, for the first 3 rounds of tawaf, and ittiba of the rida. Okay, ittiba is when we expose the right shoulder, when we put on the rida in a way that exposes the right shoulder. Okay, so these are main sunnahs, and like as I mentioned, there are other many sunnahs, right? They will take quite a long time to cover all the sunnahs. Okay, but first we should pay close attention to the arkan, the integrals, and the wajibat, the requisites first. Okay, and then after that, prepare a checklist of sunnahs, inshallah. Okay, some are related to the sa'i as presented there. Okay, running in the middle where the green lights are. Some are related to the standing at Arafah. So to join the day and night, to increase in tahleel, takbir, tahleel is la ilaha illallah, takbir, Allahu akbar, talbiyah, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, and so on, tasbih, subhanallah, reciting the Quran, and salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a lot of crying, repentance, purification, and to expose oneself to the sun, and not to sit in the shade. Okay, to stand near the boulders that are at the foot of Jabal Rahmah. Okay, so there are many sunnahs. Okay, so that's it. We've covered this. Inshallah, next week we'll continue to move. I think there's a bit more of Habib Muhammad Zain talks about what happens if we leave the integrals and the requisites, right, and the sunnahs, and then after that we enter the haramat, the forbidden things, prohibitions of Hajj, and then we have completed this chapter, inshallah. Okay, wa na'fu minkum wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam ala litil futuh wal munuh wal rusuq salah al jasadi wal ruh wa tabat al asma ala hadrat nabi sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Al-Fatiha.
يا ربنا اعترف
شرفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فضلا وجودا منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول